Hello, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Today, we are on day 63 of our Bible in a Year series. And today we're going to be doing Deuteronomy 31 through 34. And today is our last day in the book of Deuteronomy. And then we're going to go into the book of Joshua. So it's going to be a really good time. So let's wait for some of you guys to come in. I had intended to do this session today a little bit earlier. We had a change of plans, and so we are doing it at our normal time, which is 7 p.m. So we're going to wait for a few of you guys to come in. Hi, Ebony. How are you? How are you, Ebony? Hi, Raheem. Hi, Nimrock. Nimrock. Was that new? Is that NM? Tanil, how are you? So glad you guys can make it. Today is our last day in the book of Deuteronomy. It's our last day in the book of Deuteronomy, and then we are going to be in the book of Joshua. So I'm super excited. We're going to do 31 through 34. So today we're going to actually do 4 chapters, and that's only because it doesn't end on an even 3 chapters. So we're going to finish the last 4 today. And I don't plan on keeping you guys too long today. I know yesterday went kind of long, but I don't plan on keeping you guys too long today. So while we're waiting for everybody else to come in, hi, Shackled Mind, how are you? How are you? Uh-oh. Let me make sure I do this. Let's see. Hi, Jenna. Hi, Lakeisha. How are you? So, guys, let's go ahead and get started while we wait for everybody else to come in. Again, today is our last day in the book of Deuteronomy, and so we will be moving to the book of Joshua tomorrow. So, Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you so much, Father, for the opportunity to study your word with my brothers and sisters in Christ. Lord, I pray that you go before each and every single one of us, Lord, and you aid in our understanding. You bless our minds, ears, and you bless our minds and ears so that we can interpret your word as you have intended for it to be interpreted, as well as our eyes, Father. I pray that you just continue to do your work in each and every single one of us, as you've done from the beginning of time, Lord, and you bless each and every single one of us with spiritual blessings. I pray this in your mighty name, the mighty name of your son, Jesus. Amen. Okay, so let's get started. We are on chapter 31. And as we know, Moses, so God tells Moses that he indeed will not go into the promised land. He's put his foot down. He's like, Moses, don't pester me about this anymore. Do not ask me about this anymore. You are not going into the promised land. I'm not allowing you to go. You and Aaron both disobeyed me at the rock with the water. You guys both disobeyed me, and so you guys will not be able to inherit, go into and witness the land that we've been on this journey with you with. They're not going to go into it. And could you imagine Moses' position? He's helped these people. He helped deliver them from Egypt. God uses him as a vessel to deliver them from Egypt. And he gets all the way to the gate. He gets to the front door of the promised land. And he made one mistake. He tried to take the glory away from God, and he didn't do it directly. He did it indirectly. And so because God told him to speak to the rock, and Moses said, must we do this for you? And he struck the rock. And God wanted to show his glory and his power and his holiness in that place by allowing his prophet Moses to speak to the rock. But Moses took things in his own hand, and that really infuriated God. But God used Moses because Moses had seen God face to face, and so God continued to use him to get the people there. So once they got to the front door of the Holy Land, God is like, you are no longer needed at this point. You can look at it, but you will never enter it because I said so, and you took that away from my people. If they would have seen that, who knows what that could have done for them. And so we're going to talk about that now. So in chapter 31, So then Moses continued to speak these words to all Israel, saying, I am now 120 years old. Remember, Moses started this when he was 80 years old. Now remember, Aaron had died at the age of 123 years old, and he started at 83 years old. So we see symbolism here, 40 years. So they literally both lived for 40 years. They both did not live for 40 years, but they both did God's work for 40 years, and then they died. So Moses says, I am now 120 years old. I can no longer act as your leader. The Lord has told me, you will not cross the Jordan. The Lord your God is the one who will cross ahead of you. He will destroy these nations before you. It says he will destroy these nations, meaning that he's going to go before you, and you would drive them out. So meaning that when he says he will destroy these nations before you and you will drive them out, it means that before things happen in the physical realm, it first happens spiritually. So when God says, I've already defeated them for you, they've already been spiritually defeated. I don't know if you've ever seen, if you understand the concept of lightning and thunder. So you see the lightning, when the lightning strikes, it's already struck. You hear the thunder way after it. The lightning is equivalent to the spirit realm. So when things happen in the spirit realm and it is done and it is a verdict, it is done. And then the lightning comes. The sound from the lightning will come. It will come. And so essentially the lightning is God destroying them, and the thunder is them going out and driving them out like God has told them to. So he says he will destroy nations before you and you will drive them out, meaning that they've already been defeated spiritually. He says here, Joshua, or where right here, Joshua is the one who will cross ahead of you, as the Lord has said. The Lord will deal with them as he did Sihon and Og, the kings of the Amorites, and their land when he destroyed them. The Lord will deliver them over to you. So the Lord will deliver them over to you, and you must do exactly as I have commanded you. Be strong and courageous. Don't be terrified or afraid of them, for the Lord your God is the one who will go with you. He will not leave you or abandon you. So Moses then summoned Joshua and said to him in the sight of all of Israel, be strong and courageous, for you will go with this people to the land the Lord swore to give to their ancestors. You will enable them to take possession of it. The Lord is the one who will go before you. So he's saying, don't worry about what it looks like, because God is going to go before you spiritually. They may be big, they may be giants, they may be Nephilim, there may be demons, they may be all these things, but God is the one that will go before you spiritually. He will annihilate them, destroy them, and all you have to do is be obedient and walk and take the land that he has given you. And that can relate to us today. It says he will be with you. He will not leave you or abandon you. Do not be afraid or discouraged. Now he's saying this multiple times because he said this up here. He says, be strong and courageous. Don't be terrified or afraid of them. For the Lord your God is the one who will go with you, and he will not leave you or abandon you. He said that here in verse 6, and he's saying it again here in verse 8. So when God repeats something, we know that it's something that's very important. So no matter what our situation looks like, it's important that we understand that he will go before us. He will be with us. He will never leave us or abandon us. Do not be afraid or discouraged. Do not be afraid or discouraged, because he is the one that will deal with all of this. There's a parallel, because the God that we serve today is the same God that was in the book of Deuteronomy. He hasn't changed. He never changes. And so it's really important to know that he is the one that fights these battles for us. Whatever the battle may be, he fights it for us. So in verse 9, Moses wrote down this law and gave it to the priests, the sons of Levi, who carried the ark of the Lord's covenant, and to all the elders of Israel. Moses commanded them at the end of every 7 years, at the appointed time, the year of debt of cancellation, during the festivals of shelters, when all Israel assembles in the presence of the Lord your God at the place he chooses, you are to read this law aloud before all Israel. Gather the people, men, women, dependents, and the resident aliens within your city gates, so that they may listen and learn to fear the Lord your God and be careful to follow all the words of this law, so that they may listen. So he's saying, tell everybody, gather all the people so they may listen and learn to fear the Lord your God and be careful to follow all the words of this law, because we understand what the consequences of being disobedient to his word is. The consequences are dire. So then their children who do not know the law will listen and learn to fear the Lord your God as long as you live in the land you are crossing the Jordan to possess. The Lord said to Moses, the time of your death is now approaching. Call Joshua, present yourselves at the tent of meeting so that I may commission him. And when Moses and Joshua went and presented themselves at the tent of meeting, the Lord appeared at the tent in the pillar of cloud, and the cloud stood at the entrance to the tent. The Lord said to Moses, you are about to rest with your ancestors, and these people will soon prostitute themselves with foreign gods of the land they are entering. They will abandon me and break the covenant I made with them, knowing that covenants can be broken. And we can see here, we know that the covenants are broken by man, not by God. So they will abandon me and break the covenant I have made with them. Now, I want to point something else about covenant, because we talked about covenants yesterday. And so sometimes, a lot of times when we have evil covenants where our ancestors or our parents have obliged us to demonic covenants or just any type of covenant. If the covenant is not of God, it's demonic. I don't care how good it is. I don't care how helpful it may seem. I don't care how, you will use white magic to heal. If it's not of God, it's demonic. And so the only way any covenant can be broken, God will not break the covenant because he doesn't break covenants. You have to profess it with your mouth, and you have to break the covenant. And by the blood of Jesus, it will be broken, but you have to want it and you have to break it. And so right here, we see this this parallel right here where he says, where were we? We were right here where he says, they will abandon me and break the covenant I have made with them. My anger will burn against them on that day. I will abandon them and hide my face from them so that they will become easy prey. Many troubles and afflictions will come to them. On that day they will say, haven't these troubles come to us because our God is no longer with us? I will certainly hide my face on that day because of all the evil they have done by turning to other gods. And notice that he says the evil they have done by turning to other gods. And that is because whatever altar you serve, you become one with that altar. So that altar may sacrifice children, whatever it is. You may have not physically done those things, but by being a member or a part of that altar, you are now succumb under the consequences of that altar, and as well as everything else. It's kind of like if you've been in legal trouble and you have a conspiracy charge. Let's say that you're riding in the car with somebody on the passenger side, and this person just out of nowhere does a drive-by and kills a bunch of people. And you're sitting on the passenger side and you don't call the cops, and you don't try to render righteous or do anything right to make things right. You are now one of the people. What is the word I'm looking for? You are now basically you're going to be one of the people that get in trouble. There's a word for it. It escapes me right now, but you're going to be one of the people that they're going to be judged for this. You're gonna go to jail, and this is called a conspiracy charge. So what this person may be charged with murder, you may be too, because they may say, well, you haven't done anything to stop it. And so essentially it's the same thing. Whatever altar you serve, though you've done the crime or not, it doesn't matter. You will be bound by that. So it says right here, many troubles and affliction. We already read that part. Therefore, write down the song for yourselves and teach it to the Israelites and have them sing it, so that this song may be a witness for me against the Israelites. Verse 20, when I bring them into the land I swore to give their ancestors, land flowing with milk and honey, they will eat their fill and prosper. They will turn to other gods and worship them, despising me and breaking my covenant. And when many troubles and afflictions come to them, this song will testify against them, because their descendants will not have forgotten it. For I know what they are prone to do, even before I bring them into the land I swore to give them. So God is already prophesying. He's not prophesying. He's prophesying. He's saying this is what they're going to do. He knows their hearts, and Moses is no longer going to be with them. So they're not going to have anybody to hold them accountable, because Moses was very righteous in the eyes of God in many ways. There's sometimes he fell short, just like at the rock with the water, but he was typically favored by God, and he held these people up to a standard. He reminded them constantly, this is what the Lord says. He saw God face to face, and he was God's bullhorn. He was God's bullhorn. He was God's mouthpiece. And so Moses wrote down this song on that day and taught it to the Israelites. And the Lord commissioned Joshua, son of Nun, be strong and courageous, for you will bring the Israelites into the land I swore to them, and I will be with you. So when Moses had finished writing down on a scroll every single word of this law, he commanded the Levites who carried the ark of the Lord's covenant, take this book of the law and place it beside the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, so that it may remain there as a witness against you. For I know how rebellious and stiff-necked you are, and if you are rebelling against the Lord now, while I'm still alive, how much more will you rebel after I'm dead? And this is Moses speaking. Now assemble all your tribal elders and officials before me so that I may speak these words directly to them and call heaven and earth as witness again today. We see here they often call heaven and earth as witnesses. For I know that after my death you will become completely corrupt and turn from the path I have commanded you. Disaster will come to you in the future because you will do what is evil in the Lord's sight, angering him with what your hands have made. And remember, there are so many times that God wanted to smite these people off the earth, and Moses would go and he would beg and plead and he would intercede, and like he fasted for 40 days. Whenever he did the dry fast on the hill, he didn't do it to be closer to God because he had already seen God face to face, but he did it to petition God not to kill them, because while he was up there the first time, he came down and there was a golden calf standing. He petitioned God. He fasted and prayed for these people. So it is by Moses alone that these people are even still walking and breathing, because God wanted to wipe them off. And God said, through you, Moses, I will make you a mini nation, a much greater, stronger, and powerful nation than these stiff-necked people. So now that Moses is not here to intercede for them, he served as an intermediary. They're kind of doomed. So then Moses recited aloud every single word of this song, the entire song, the entire assembly of Israel. Moses recited along every single word of this song to the entire assembly of Israel. And we're on chapter 32. Let me check and see. Yes, okay, accessory to murder. Yes, I was thinking of that and I just could not think of it. Guilty by association. Yes, okay. There's a lot of accomplice. Okay, see, you guys are on it with the adjectives. I could not. I'm thinking like, what is it? There's a word for it. There's another word for it. I can't think of it. It's not the victim. What's the opposite of the victim? The offender? I don't know. Be very careful of who your friends are. Face to face. Yes. Accomplice, joint enterprise. You guys are with it with the adjectives or the synonyms. Okay. So this is the song of Moses. He said, pay attention, heavens, and I will speak. Listen, earth, to the words from my mouth. Let my teaching fall like rain and my words settle like dew, like gentle rain on the new grass and showers on tender plants. For I will proclaim the Lord's name, declare the greatness of our God, the rock. His work is perfect. All his ways are just. A faithful God without bias. He is righteous and true. His people have acted corruptly towards him, and this is their defect. They are not his children, but a devious and crooked generation. Is this how you repay the Lord? You foolish and senseless people. Isn't he your father and creator? Didn't he make you and sustain you? Remember the days of old. Consider the years of past generations. Ask your father, and he'll tell you, your elders, and they'll teach you. When the Most High gave the nations of their inheritance and divided the human race, he set the boundaries of the people according to the number of the people of Israel. But the Lord's portion is his people. The Lord's portion is his people. Jacob, his own inheritance. Wow. I didn't even realize that specific thing was in there. But the Lord's portion is his people, and Jacob is his own inheritance. He found him in a desolate land, in a barren, howling wilderness. He surrounded him, cared for him, and protected him as the pupil of his eye. He watches over him, over his nest like an eagle, and hovers over his young. He spreads his wing, catches him, and carries him on his feathers. The Lord alone led him with no help from a foreign God. He made him ride on the heights of the land and eat the produce of the field. He nourished him with honey from the rock and oil from flinty rock, curds from the herd and milk from the flock, with the fats of lamb, rams from Bashan, and goats, with the choicest grains of wheat. You drank wine from the finest grapes. Then Jeshurun became fat and rebelled. You became fat, bloated, and gorged. He abandoned the God who made him and scorned the rock of his salvation. They provoked his jealousy with different gods. They enraged him with detestable practices. They sacrificed to demons, not God, to gods they had not known. New gods that just came on the scene, new gods that had just arrived, which your ancestors did not fear. You ignored the rock who gave you birth. You forgot the God who gave birth to you. And I think it's really important to point out here. He says that They sacrificed to demons, not God, and to gods they had not known, new gods that they had just arrived, which your ancestors did not fear. And I think anything that you worship, there's a fear affiliated with it. There may be a fear of losing that thing. If there's a deity or something that you're worshiping and you're hoping to get, is a transaction. So you're willing to sacrifice a child in exchange for wealth or something. There's a consequence with it. If you butcher it or something, there's fear of the consequences of what that deity could do to you, because they're known as powerful and they've exalted them high. And so he's saying your ancestors didn't fear any of these things, but now you do. And the fear that they have is not like, again, fear of God is not necessarily like, I'm afraid, I'm shaking in terror. He is known as a dreaded warrior. Indeed, he's a man of war. But the fear is essentially like a parent. You get a bad grade on your report card. You love your parents, but whenever you come home and you have this bad grade, your fear is the consequences from how you've performed. It's not because you fear them because they're going to kill you, but it is the wrath that's going to come, the reaction, the response from it. So there's different types of fear. He says here, when the Lord saw this, he despised them, angered by his sons and daughters. He said, I will hide my face from them, and I will see what will become of them. For they are a perverse generation, unfaithful children. They have provoked my jealousy with what is not a God. And this is the juggler of everything. He says, do not worship other gods, because they have provoked my jealousy with what is not a God. And this is a Lord G God, because he is the only capital G God. They have enraged me with their worthless idols. So I will provoke their jealousy with what is not a people. I will enrage with them a foolish nation. For fire has been kindled because of my anger, and burns to the depths of Sheol. It devours the land and its produce, and scorches the foundations of the mountains. I will pile disasters on them. I will use up my arrows against them. And know that God has an abundance and a never-ending supply of arrows. And when he says, I will use up my arrows against them, that means like relentless, as non-stop arrow shots. They will be weak from hunger, ravaged by pestilence and bitter plague, and I will unleash on them wild beasts with fangs, as well as venomous snakes that slither in the dust. Outside, the sword will take their children. So outside, the sword will take their children, but inside there will be terror. So they will have no rest. And remember, he says, you will be cursed when you come, and you'll be blessed when you come and you go. But with these curses, he says, the outside and the inside, you'll be cursed on the inside and the outside. You'll witness it. You'll be constant terror. The young man and the young woman will be killed, the infant and the gray-haired man. I would have said, I will cut them to pieces and blot out the memory of them from mankind, if I had not feared provocation from the enemy, or feared that these foes might misunderstand and say, our own hand has prevailed. It wasn't the Lord who did all of this. So he doesn't want anybody taking glory for what he did. So even if he takes out an entire nation via another nation, like if he uses the Amalekites to take out the Israelites, that didn't happen. But if he were to use something like that, he wouldn't want the Amalekites saying, we did this because we're a glorious, powerful nation. Like, no, he wants to receive all of his glory. Israel is a nation lacking sense, with no understanding at all. If only they were wise, they would comprehend this. They would understand their fate. How could one pursue 1,000 or put 10,000 to fight? We are here. Unless their rock has sold them, unless the Lord has given them up. But their rock is not like our rock. Notice lowercase r and a capital R. Their rock is not like our rock, as even our enemies concede. For their vine is from the vine of Sodom, and from the fields of Gomorrah. Their grapes are poisonous, their clusters are bitter, their wine is serpent's venom, and the deadly poison of the cobras. Now notice they're talking about Sodom and Gomorrah. We haven't really gotten there yet, I don't believe, but have we gotten to Sodom and Gomorrah yet? Have we talked about that yet already, guys? Let's see. Wait, what happened here? Have we talked about Sodom and Gomorrah yet? I don't think so. I think we have, actually. Let's see. I think we have. My computer's so low. Let me see. It may have been in Exodus. Let's see. It is. Oh, I guess we did already cover it. It was in Genesis, it looks like. I guess time flies when you're having fun. Okay, well, yeah, so we did cover it. Okay. See, I don't know the exact address of some of these. I just know the stories, the plots behind it. So we see, like, so it says right here, like he's using all of these as metaphor, not metaphors, but he's bringing everything remembrance to all the things that he's done, and saying when he says, "Learn from your elders and learn from, ask your father and learn from your elders." There's a lot of wisdom in that, because a lot of times, if we even just talk to some of the elders in a church and we think of everything that they've been through, we may look at them, you may see them and they may look frail, but they are packed with wisdom because they have been through a lot of the things you're going through. They've just been able to overcome it, even though they hold it together. He says here, "It is not stored up with me, sealed up in my vaults. Vengeance belongs to me, and I will repay. Vengeance belongs to the Lord, and I will repay. In time their foot will slip, for their day of disaster is near, and their doom is coming quickly. The Lord will indeed vindicate his people and have compassion on his servants when he sees that their strength is gone, and no one is left, slave or free. He will say, where are their gods, the rock they found refuge?" Again, there's that lowercase r. "Who ate the fat of their sacrifices and drank the wine of their drink offerings? Let them rise up and help you. Let it be a shelter for you. See now that I am he. See now that I alone am he. There is no God but me. I bring death and I give life. I wound and I heal. No one can rescue anyone from my power." And I think that is so amazing. Whenever you're going through something and you're dealing with some sort of spiritual warfare, no one can rescue anyone from my power. So when God comes in and he shows up on the scene and he deals with your enemies, no one can rescue them from his power. Nobody. There's nobody that can help him. "I raise my hand to the heavens and declare, as surely as I live forever, when I sharpen my flashing sword and my hand takes hold of judgment, I will take vengeance on my adversaries and repay those who hate me." And notice here he says, my adversaries. "I will make my arrows drunk with blood while my sword devours flesh, the blood of the slain and the captives, the heads of the enemy leaders. Rejoice, nations, concerning his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants, for he will take vengeance on his adversaries. He will purify his land and his people." Keep in mind, this is a song. This is a song that he wrote. This is a song. This is a song, and so it's a song that's about 43 verses. "So Moses came with Joshua, son of Nun, and recited all the words of this song in the presence of the people. After Moses finished reciting all these words to all Israel, he said to them, 'Take to heart all these words I'm giving as a warning to you today, so that you may command your children to follow all the words of this law carefully. For they are not meaningless words to you, but they are your life. And by them you will live long in the land you are crossing the Jordan to possess.'" So on that same day, the Lord spoke to Moses, "Go up to Mount Nebo and Abarim range in the land of Moab, across from Jericho, and view the land of Canaan I am giving the Israelites as possession. Then you will die on the mountain that you go up, and you will be gathered to your people, just as your brother Aaron died on Mount Hor, and he was gathered to his people." So for both of you, this is why he's not being able to go into the promised land. "For both of you broke faith with me among the Israelites at the waters of Meribah, Kadesh, in the wilderness of Zin, by failing to treat me as holy in their presence. Although from a distance you will view the land that I'm giving the Israelites, you will not go there." And I think it's so important to know that even despite all of this stuff that God is saying, you're not going to get your way. You're not going to go. I'm not letting you go there, but you're still going to be obedient. Moses is still obedient, and he still has the zeal for God. He still wants to see God's vision come to pass. A lot of times when God tells us no, like you've been doing this all these years, you've been doing this for 40 years, but when God tells us no, we want to have a complete meltdown. We want to stop serving him, because we were only in it to do what we wanted, out of it. We only wanted to get what we wanted. But Moses stayed true to him the entire time. He says here, this is the blessing that Moses, the man of God, gave the Israelites before his death. He said, "The Lord came from Sinai and appeared to them from Seir. He shone on them from Mount Paran, and came with 10,000 holy ones, with lighting from his right hand for them. Indeed, he loves the people. All your holy ones are in your hand, and they assemble at your feet. Each receives your words. Moses gave us instructions, a possession for the assembly of Jacob. So he became king of Jeshurun. When the leaders of the people gathered, when the tribes of with the tribes of Israel. Now let Reuben live and not die, though his people become few. He said this about Judah: Lord, hear Judah's cry and bring him to his people. He fights for his cause with his own hands, but may you be a help against his foes. And I think what's really important is that each tribe that he's going to go through is very indicative of the things that that tribe was dealing with. He said this about Levi: Your Thummim and Urim belong to your faithful one. You tested him at Massah and contended with him at the waters of Meribah. He said about his father and mother, I do not regard them. He disregarded his brothers and didn't acknowledge his sons, for they kept your word and maintained your covenant. They will teach your ordinances to Jacob and your instructions to Israel. They will set incense before you and whole burnt offerings on your altar. Lord, bless his possessions and accept the works of his hands. Break the back of his adversaries and enemies so that they cannot rise again. He said this about Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin: The Lord's beloved rests securely on him. He shields him all day long, and he rests on his shoulders. He said this about Joseph: May his land be blessed by the Lord, with the dew of heaven's bounty and the watery depths that lie beneath, with the bountiful harvest from the sun and the abundant yield of the seasons, with the best products of the ancient mountains and the bounty of eternal hills, with the choice gifts of the land and everything in it, and with favor of him who appeared in the burning bush. May these rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the prince of his brothers. His firstborn bull has splendor and horns like those of a wild ox. He gores all the peoples with them to the ends of the earth. Such are the 10,000s of Ephraim, and such are the thousands of Manasseh. He said this about Zebulun: Rejoice, Zebulun, in your journeys, and Issachar in your tents. They summoned the people to a mountain. There they offered acceptable sacrifices, for they draw the wealth of the seas and the hidden treasures of the sand. He said this about Gad: The one who enlarges Gad's territory will be blessed. He lies down like a lion and tears off an arm of even a head. He chose the best part for himself, because a ruler's portion was assigned there for him. He came with the leaders of the people. He carried out the Lord's justice and his ordinances for Israel. He said this about Dan: Dan is a young lion leaping out of Bashan. He said this about Naphtali: Naphtali enjoying approval, full of the Lord's blessing. Take possession to the west and the south. He said this about Asher: May Asher be the most blessed of the sons, and may he be the most favored among his brothers, and dip his foot in olive oil. May the bolts of your gates be iron and bronze, and your strength last as long as you live. There is none like the God of Jeshurun, who raised the heavens to your aid, the cloud in his majesty. The God of old is your dwelling place, and underneath are the everlasting arms. He drives out the enemy before you and commands, destroy. So Israel dwells securely. Jacob lives untroubled in a land of grain and new wine. Even his skies drip with dew. How happy you are, Israel! Who is like you, a people saved by the Lord? He is the shield that protects you, the sword you boast in. Your enemies will cringe before you, and you will tread on their backs. And now we're going to talk about Moses' death. Let's see. He is with the Lord in heaven. Exactly. It's greater than the promised land. It's not the promised land. He has peace in that the people deliver. Right. He finished it to the very end. He took them to the very end, to the front door. I wonder if they reminisce later. Sometimes I don't know, because they had Moses. They were in the presence of Moses, and they still complained about everything. They still complained about everything, even with Moses right there with them. They seemed ungrateful. A lot of times they would complain to God. The issue wasn't how grateful they felt, because The issue was that they kept angering God because of their complaining, because of their wicked ways. And Moses was their intercessor. And I don't know if they realized how blessed they were, like you were saying, they were to have Moses. I don't know if they realized how blessed they were, but a lot of times you don't realize what you have until it's gone. But we're going to see here soon that even with Moses gone, it's already been prophesied that these people are going to do whatever they want to do. They're going to go back to their heart's desire. Exactly. You know, Moses was kind of like a parallel to Jesus. He was not Jesus, but he served as an intermediary. He was the connection that connected the people to God. He was that connector people. That connector, the missing piece. He interceded for them. He petitioned God. God wanted to kill them so many times, but because of Moses, they were still there. They were still breathing. Okay, so we're in the last chapter here, Moses' death. So then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which faces Jericho, and the Lord showed him all the land, Gilead as far as Dan, all of Naphtali, the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as Mediterranean Sea, the Negev, and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palms as far as Zor. The Lord then said to him, "This is the land I promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will give it to your descendants, and I have let you see it with your own eyes, but you will not cross into it." So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the Lord's word. He buried him in the valley in the land of Moab, facing Beth Peor, and no one to this day knows where his grave is. And I think it's so important that nobody knows where his grave is, because I feel like they would have worshipped him. They would have treated him like an idol. They would have dug that body up and they would have put it in the temple, and they would probably start worshiping it because he was the one that God used, and they would probably started treating him as a God himself. And so that's important that they don't know where the body is. But it's equally as important. It says Moses was 120 years old when he died. So he was on this journey for 40 years. It says his eyes were not weak, and his vitality had not left him. So he was still in good health, but his time was up, and God said, "You're not going to cross over here. These people are getting ready to cross over, and you can't go. So this is the end for you." The Israelites wept for Moses in the plains of Moab for 30 days. Then the days of weeping and mourning for Moses came to an end. Joshua, the son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom. And this right here shows us that the wisdom is indeed a spirit, because Moses had laid his hands on him. So the Israelites obeyed him and did as the Lord had commanded Moses. No prophet has risen again in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. He was unparalleled for all the signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do against the land of Egypt, to Pharaoh, to all his officials, and to all his land, and for all the mighty acts of power and terrifying deeds that Moses performed in the sight of Israel. And that is all we're going to cover today. And tomorrow we're going to be going through the book of Joshua. The book of Joshua. Yeah, Abraham was a lot longer, but I feel like the only reason, I think it's really interesting too, that they only lived for 40 years. Aaron lived for 40 years, and Aaron lived for 40 years, and Moses lived for 40 years. So Aaron died at, I believe, 123, and because he died shortly, I think maybe like a year or so before that, and then Moses died at 120, because Aaron was 3 years older than Moses. He was 3 years older. He was a bridge to the Lord. Yes, absolutely. Unshackled mind. You hit the nail right on the head. You hit the nail right on the head. But it just shows you that he goes before us. I think one of the things that really stood out to me is that he literally goes before us in every single thing that we do. He goes before us and he says, "I've already given you this situation. I've done it for you already. I've already handed it over to you. It's yours. It's yours. You just have to go in, be obedient, and do what I tell you to do." But so many times we're paralyzed by fear, and we never do exactly what God has called us to do, because we think too much in the physical as opposed to the spiritual. We have to walk by faith. We have to walk by what's unseen and not really focus on what's seen, because if we look at what's seen, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. He was an amazing man. He was a very, very much, and there's not been anybody since him like him. I mean, we have like Christ, but Christ was God. Christ was God, so it's not the same. But as far as man goes, he was the only one. And he was incredibly humble. Like, he was incredibly humble. And I think when we think of the humility that he faced, he never exalted himself. I feel like when we think of Moses and we read about who he was, he spent the majority of his time dealing with these people, like basically babysitting. And apart from, if he wasn't babysitting, he was on his knees begging God not to kill them. Those are the two main things when I think of Moses. Those are the two main categories. He was either babysitting or he was begging God not to kill them. Yes, Kuda. It does. It does. I feel like all of the Old Testament shows us the character, the personality of God. It shows us who he is, how he operates, like how we're made in his image, how all he wants is us to love. And I think it's really important that as we read through this, we are looking at this from the perspective of God and not from the perspective of us being like one of the Israelites. And so, because sometimes I think when we read the Bible, it's like, oh, well, that could be me. But I think it's easier to understand it when we read it from his perspective. He loved these people. He did all these things for these people. He delivered these people from Egypt. He took them and he not only did he destroy their oppressors, but he made an example of them by individually killing each and every single one of the gods and deities that they served. He destroyed them all, made an example of them, publicly humiliated them, and then did miraculous things, parted the sea so that they can walk through it. They walk right through it. And when our enemies tried to come up behind and wash them off, he did all of these signs and wonders for these people, and they still did not love him. He's heartbroken. He's heartbroken. And I think when we look at it from his perspective, at least that's what I get from it. And I know that sometimes people read it and they get different things from it. But when I read that, the more I read it and I think about things and I meditate and pray about it and look at things from his perspective, he loves us so much. And all he wants us to do is love him back. And the way that you show your parents, your earthly parents, that you love them is by obeying them. When they give you instructions, you do it. If they say, be home by this time, you're there by that time. If they say, do this, you do that. You show your parents that you love them by your obedience and your respect for them. And God is no different. He wants us to be obedient to him and respect him. And that's all he wanted for these people. He wanted his children to love him and be obedient to him and love him and respect him. But time and time again, they served as disrespectful. They were talking smack about him. They did not honor him. They're saying, did he bring us out here to die? Like we should have stayed in bondage. We should have stayed in captivity. At least we had, at least we had a place to sleep. At least we had like a jail cell over our head. At least we had food, whatever it may be, but they were just so disobedient and they did not honor him and they did not respect him and they did not love him. And the biggest thing he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart. And when we think of our parents, I know as a parent, we say love your parents, like love your parents. I want my daughters to love me and to be obedient to me and to just keep my rules. Like if I say, you have to, this is your curfew, if you have any questions, I'm here for you to help you. I want to see you grow and prosper. But whenever they become disobedient, they talk back, then you become enraged with them. And God is no different, except he's holier. He's far holier than any human parent could ever be. Without Moses, those people would be like out of here. Moses, he did a dry fast for 40 days. He did not have food or water for 40 days in the presence of the Lord because he understood that God was ready to take them out. He was ready to take them out. He said he did so much for them. How he thought he was ready to lead his people when he was in Egypt. It is interesting how that happens, Kuda. And remember that he didn't even feel like, he said, I can't even speak well, like I don't speak well. So he didn't even feel comfortable speaking to Pharaoh. He's like, why would they listen to me? But he didn't understand that God was working and God would work through them. And so he needed Aaron to be basically his sidekick to go and because Aaron was a much better speaker. And so Aaron went with him. But initially, God had only called Moses. So these people, I don't know, like the more I read about it, it's like, Lord, like the Israelites, I'm getting frustrated with them. It's like they're not getting the message. Think about how many other cultures would have loved to just have this God fight for them. But these were the descendants of the people that he made the covenant with. God will not break his covenant. Humans break covenants. People break covenants. God won't break. He's a covenant keeping God, good or bad. A dry fast, I wouldn't do a dry fast of no food, no water. I think you can probably go without, you can definitely go without food for 40 days, but I wouldn't push it to dry fast unless the spirit of the living God has come upon you and take that from God. But I would not do a dry fast for 40 days. I've personally done 40-day fasts without, and I've been fine. They're challenging, and you can look on YouTube. There's a lot of people that have done 40-day water fast. Um, they're challenging, but they can be done. But you have to be led by the Spirit to do those things. Don't be led by God to do them. Don't just say, I'm going to do this just for this. Because some people will do it. They'll do it for like weight loss benefits. God doesn't want, to be, stapled onto a different agenda that you have. If you're going to fast, you're going to fast for him specifically. And he'll give you specific instructions on how to fast and what to fast for. Jeremiah said he was too young. Exactly. Exactly. He said, I am a youth. I can't do this. And God said, don't say that. He said, he told him not to say that. And I think it's so important too that like we have to be cautious of words we say, because the words that we say, because sometimes God will, we curse ourselves. And I think there's so many times throughout scripture, just like when Jeremiah said that he was too young to do this, God basically told him like, don't talk like that. And again, when Elizabeth and Zachariah and angel Gabriel came to Zachariah, and he said that your wife is going to have a child, and Zachariah instantly started to doubt it. He started to speak against it. And the angel Gabriel basically made him a mute so that he wouldn't speak against it. There's power in the words that we speak. Yes, Kuda. So many people will say they'll try and fast like TikTok. They'll try and fast like Facebook. No, that's not a fast. A fast is fit. It's something that you need to live off of. You don't need Facebook and TikTok to live off of. It's something that you really sacrifice. It typically and biblically speaking, it is food. It is food. I fasted for 3 days once, and I ended up in the hospital. I'll be honest with you guys. I don't really. Tend to not really talk so much about like the different fasts that I've done, but I did a very extensive dry fast, and it was a part of it was a part of my deliverance, and of how God delivered me from the bondage that I was in. But I did a dry fast, but I was called. God specifically told me to do that, and I remember whenever He told me to do this, because I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. And I was like, Lord, I can't do it. And he's like, you can do it. And so it was literally putting one foot in front of the other. And when I tell you that like I saturated myself in the word. Now, any other time, I remember the very first time I did a dry fast, I thought I didn't think I'd get through the day because I was hungry, I was thirsty, it was challenging, but God kept building me up to it. And I remember some days would be harder than others, some fasts would be harder than others, but any time that I studied the word, and I'm not talking about just reading your Bible verse of the day, I mean literally getting down, pen, highlighter, meditating on his word, I did not thirst. I did not hunger. And I can't even explain it. There's some instances during a dry fast, like day 3 or 4, that I would even find myself going and getting in 10,000 steps in a day. It was only because the Lord was sustaining me, but I was also saturated in his word. Whenever I did any type of fast and I was not reading the word, it was incredibly hard. And if you're not reading the word, it's a diet. It's nothing more than a diet. You're suffering for no reason at all. It's a diet. But if you're studying the word, I can't explain it, but you don't have those desires. You don't have desire for food. You don't have the desire for water. He said it sustains you. It's literally spiritual food. Exactly. Either great. This is God present sustains, and His glory will be. Yes, Bernard. And it got to the point where a water fast was more challenging than a dry fast. And I can't even explain why, but it was easier for me to do a dry fast than to do a water fast. Yes, you get filled with the Spirit. You get filled with the Spirit. And God has given me so many revelations during these fasts. Because at first I remember, I remember, and the dry fast is a funny story because initially God had told me to fast and pray for my enemies. And typically, like I did an intermittent fast, I don't want to say I didn't want to do it, but I didn't want to like suffer too much for the sake of my enemies. And so I said, okay, well, I'm a big night eater, so I eat a lot of tiny portions, you know, and so especially at night, like I'm a snacker. And so I said, okay, well, I just won't eat anything past 6 p.m. Between 6 p.m. and say 6 a.m. I wake up maybe around 3 a.m. every morning, and typically when I wake up, the first thing I have is a cup of coffee. Um, and so I said, I'll just fast between those hours. Okay, fine. And then God wasn't really pleased with that because anytime I fasted for anything else, it would be much more like challenging. So I do like no food. I do like a 12-hour window. Like I probably not eat from maybe, midnight to like, 6 p.m. or something like that. Like I fast for maybe like 16 hours or something like that. But when it came to them, it was when I was sleeping is when I was fasting. And so God called me at the end of that. He called me to do a dry fast. And through that period, after coming out of that, I now regularly pray for my enemies because he showed me a lot of things with that. So I think the part of the thing with fasting is as long as you're worshiping, you're reading, you're praising, and I can't stress enough just reading the word, just reading his word, and also meditating and waiting for him to communicate with you and talk to you. You will indeed you'll hear his voice and you hear very clear instructions. And I'm a walking testimony for that. Be led by the Spirit. Some people can't do it some people can only do it, for a couple of days. I've done very extensive ones. I don't want to say how long because I don't want people to try to. You have to be led by the Spirit to do it. But some people can do it for a day or two. Some people can do it for, you know, this is some people. It's true. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of people that pretend to be. You have to be led by the Spirit with everything. Everything. Spend a lot of time in prayer and meditating and just kind of and removing all secular music from your just your playlist. No secular music. And I know that's a really hard one for a lot of people. But replacing all of that with either sermons, audiobooks, podcasts, Christian music, and some of these Christian musics, these Christian songs, you have to be wary of those too. You have to be wary of those too, because a lot of times if you're listening to a gospel song and it has you feeling the same way you felt when you were in the world, I wouldn't listen to that. I would probably remove that from my playlist. Good night, Justina. Oh, that's Chad. Okay. Bye, Chad. So glad you can make it in. I love all the input that you give in. You can just, if you're looking to fast, you can just start with intermittent. You can just do like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Or you can just start with a juice fast. You can start with that. Just drink juice all day. And I'm not talking like orange juice or you go get like the regular juice. Get a juice or get like some fresh squeezed juice and just drink that all day. Yeah, a lot of the new songs are just kind of demonic. And if you listen to some of the lyrics, you just think like, how did this even get like? Why are people not enraged about this? But I know it's kind of late, guys. I know it's been on here. We've been on here for about an hour now, and so I always say I don't want to keep you too long. Mm. I used to love Beethoven. I was in marching band when I was in high school, and so I love classical music, Tchaikovsky. We did a lot of Dvorak. I'm not a really big fan of Bach. He's okay. Good luck with your physical therapy success. But I don't want to keep you guys too long, and so I pray for each and every single one of you guys. I pray that God continues to work on you guys and just work in your life, and that He just continues to pour into you. And when it comes to fasting and praying, just be led by the Spirit. Ask God, what exactly does He want you to do? He will tell you exactly how long He wants you to fast and pray for. I'll tell you, fasting is not something that I love to do, but sometimes God, He'll say, I want you to go on a fast, and it's important that you're obedient to when He tells you to do it, because a lot of times it is because something is about to come up. And every single time I follow his instructions on going into a fast, it has always worked out in my favor. It has always worked out in my favor. I played, so I played the flute, I played the clarinet, I played alto and tenor sax. If you play like a reed instrument, then you know, like it's, if you can play like the alto sax, you can play bari sax and tenor as well. Um, but initially, I started out with the flute, so a lot of woodwind instruments. I tried the bassoon, but I just could not get. I couldn't get with the bassoon. It was a little bit more challenging. But either way, no, guys, I'm gonna get off of here now. So I pray for you guys. I pray that you guys have a wonderful evening, and I will see you guys tomorrow.